The collapse of peace talks in Cairo unleashed a bombardment, the likes of which Gazans have not experienced since the start of the war. Last week, the world's media were all over themselves as US President Joe Biden appeared to warn Israel that if it launched its assault on Rafah, America would withhold heavy bombs. Since then, Israel has done just that, and what it intended to do by seizing the Palestinian side of the Rafah border, closing it completely, and sending up to 500,000 refugees northwards. In fact, Israel has done more than that. It has carpet-bombed East Rafah, Jabalia in the north, Zaytun in Gaza City, and all but stopped aid going into Gaza through the closure of Rafah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called Biden's bluff, and true to form, Biden's threat proved to be bluster. Biden has done nothing. The only thing he has said is that Hamas is responsible and could have had a ceasefire tomorrow. This bears no relation to the facts. Negotiations with Hamas broke down over Israel's determination to keep on prosecuting its war after all the hostages are released. If the issue was the hostages alone, a permanent ceasefire would have been agreed months ago. It is Netanyahu's determination to keep on fighting until he gets Yahya Sinwar's scalp that is prolonging this savage onslaught against the Palestinian people of Gaza as a whole. Of course, this is what Netanyahu wants to happen. He and a clear majority of Israeli Jews want the human cost to be as high as possible, and say so unambiguously and repeatedly. A video of Palestinians falling off a rooftop trying to retrieve aid that had been airdropped went viral in Israel with emoji love memes. It's becoming hard for Israeli lawyers to accuse South Africa of blatant misrepresentation at the International Court of Justice, when no one, not even the judges, believe Israel anymore. The latest poll found that 73% of Britons support an immediate ceasefire and 55% are now in favour of ending UK arms sales. Chris Doyle, director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding, said the findings show that both the government and the Labour leadership lag sluggishly behind British public opinion by failing to take decisive actions needed to help bring the horror we see in Gaza to a swift end. This puts the current Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, in a position of King Canute, trying to hold back the waves. Cameron has been even worse than Biden, if that is possible. He said cutting arms to Israel would strengthen Hamas and castigated the BBC for not calling it a terrorist organisation. He also refused to reinstate Britain's funding for UNRWA, despite the fact that an independent UN review headed by a former French foreign minister found no evidence to substantiate Israel's claims that UNRWA staff were members of terrorist groups. Over 50 MPs and members of the House of Lords urged Cameron to restore funding, saying that it would send a powerful message of solidarity to those affected by the crisis in Gaza and reaffirm the UK's leadership in global humanitarian efforts. All ignored. Under Cameron, Britain has now become fully aligned with the most right-wing government in Israel's history. Like Israel, Britain only wants this war to end when Hamas is destroyed. As this war aim is unachievable, Britain is in effect supporting the permanent reoccupation of Gaza. Like Netanyahu, Cameron ignored the death of the British-Israeli captive Nadav Popplewell, who died of wounds sustained in Israeli bombing. Cameron has been silent too on the closure of Rafah, and when he finally spoke, he told the BBC over the weekend that the UK does not support a major operation in Rafah without a plan. Precisely that is happening. He's also silent on the movement of up to 500,000 refugees northwards from Rafah to an area which has no capacity to feed or water them. For the second time in this war, Biden and Cameron are giving Netanyahu a clear green light to continue this war as he started it. A war clearly and indisputably targeting the people of Gaza as a whole. But the situation is not all dark. Egypt, a key neighbour, has finally taken action on Israel's takeover of the Rafah border. Looking back on it, there probably was a tacit understanding stretching as far back as January that Israel could take over the Palestinian side of the border as long as that takeover was temporary and as long as the target was Hamas. A common interest in getting rid of Hamas has turned into a conflict of interest over Rafah. Egypt has belatedly realised it will lose all control over the border as well as a lucrative source of revenue. Having lost its influence over Libya and Sudan, losing the Palestinian file is too much for it. Not only them, the United Arab Emirates, the most enthusiastic player in the Abraham Accords, which were designed to normalise relations with Israel before an agreement on the Palestinian state had been reached, has refused to take part in any post-war plan which provides cover for an Israeli presence in the Strip. The war has become a poison chalice for any Arab leader, and Cameron proved to be the true heir to Lord Balfour, who declared a homeland for the Jews in 1917, paving the way for 76 more or less continuous years of conflict. The policy of supporting Israel, no matter what it does and what crimes it commits, is doomed. And if the Western world had any sense of self-preservation in a world where the centre of power is drifting away from it, they too should walk away from this policy. The justification for the barbarities committed in this war's name are now truly running thin.